Good morning, good evening, good afternoon to everybody around the world. Welcome to the Metaverse Nomads podcast, episode number 30. Metaverse Nomads is a podcast dedicated to our favorite play to earn games in the metaverse. And who are we? Well, collectively, we're the Metaverse Nomads. We lead a play to earn gaming guild called Rome. And today, we had to pivot a little bit from our planned agenda because Star Atlas dropped some major alpha on their town hall. Specifically new information on zones in Star Atlas and the debut of their second ship brochure in the Galactic Asset Offering. Joining me today are my fellow Nomads and Rome Council leaders. Jesse, how you doing today?
I am good, man. But I think today is episode 31.
Oh, I blew it. Episode 31. Thank you for keeping me on my toes. I guess it's episode 30 for me because I was gone last week, so I lost track, right? So 30 for me and 31 for everyone else.
We actually had like 31. We had 30 and 30A since we had the pre-record of the interview, and then we had the regular show. So we had two shows last week.
Yeah. Very good, very good. And what a wonderful interview it was. I mean, that was a top class interview. Even my mother said it was good. Regular listener. Ray, how you doing?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
We got you, man.
All right, I'm doing great. Good to be here this week. Got a wedding this evening, but I'm here. Let's do this.
Very good, very good. Fancy, how are you today, my friend?
Yeah, what's up, everyone? Glad to have a lot to talk about this week, and thanks for coming again.
Very good. Well, I said in the intro there that Star Atlas did a major alpha drop of different things this weekend, and Fancy, I know you put some good stuff together for us, so why don't you lead us into it?
Yeah, so the first thing to talk about, I guess, is there's been some new hires recently. Newt was brought on to the Star Atlas team. Makes great Polis articles, and we've had him on the show. Congratulations, buddy.
Good job.
Yes, congratulations. Now I think he's going to get his Newtopia. He's going to realize his Newtopia now that he's working for the team, I think.
Yeah, could become part of the lore. They also recruited four Star Citizen, 4 production artists. We talked to a couple weeks ago about how things aren't really great over there, and they're in high demand everywhere else. So I'm not surprised, really.
Yeah, and we've seen a lot of their artists come over and do work already. So I don't know if this comes as much of a surprise, but just based on the art that I've seen coming out of Star Citizen, it's great work. So I'm excited to see what they put together.
Yeah.
So one other thing is they won the Website of the Year award this year, and we've got that clip lined up.
Awesome.
User's choice for Star Atlas. We're super excited. Thanks to everyone who voted and to the amazing awards community.
On behalf of the team creating our blockchain gaming metaverse, I'd like to thank our community for sharing the vision of an immersive open world the size of a galaxy and building the future with us. I also want to thank the creative team at Hello Monday for helping us manifest and condense this intergalactic vision in the form of a website on staratlas.com. It's a great honor to receive this award and be recognized as a driving force in inspiring people around the world.
Yeah, that was great.
That's pretty awesome. So I didn't know they were going to they had that technology. What if they get to do that in the final game where you can actually talk through a mic and your character, mimes the words? I think that'd be awesome.
I can see that happening. I mean, that's Ready Player One style, right? So.
Yeah. Well, congratulations to the Star Atlas team. I think that's well deserved. The website is definitely different than anything I've ever seen. And they're adding more and more to it all the time. I think it's a pretty neat experience to go over there. So for those of you who may not have been to the website, might be coming from a different IP, please go take a look. It's well deserved, that award.
Yeah, I agree. And leading us on, so they also said they're releasing 2 new ships next week, and they also released the Star Atlas Galactic brochure V2, which is very great to see.
So before we get into the ships, Fancy, did they give us any previews of what the ships would be next week?
There wasn't anything said about that, but I assume we have a lot to pull from this document now.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, even at the beginning, that first ship that you see there, that looks like a huge cargo ship, far bigger than a pack light, right?
Yeah, I assume it's some sort of thimble. It has all like the writing on it that we've seen on other ones.
Mm-hmm. It's nice to see that you can still get hot dogs in the metaverse as well, right? Look at
Is
that
that
sexy
do
thing.
we know what that one is? Is that a freight? I mean, or is it some type of maintenance vessel?
The top one?
Yeah.
There's been a couple guesses from what it could be. There is a couple new roles that we're going to start off talking about. And yeah, let's start on that.
Well, maybe as we go through, we can figure out which one it is.
Well,
yeah.
Since we're starting at the top, there was some info on that page that is kind of interesting there. We're in February now. I guess we're calling this Wave 2 of the ship drop. And the thing that caught my attention there is I can see that it says fixed and auction pricing from, does it say $1? There's going to be
$1 to 10 million plus.
10 million. Yeah.
All prices listed are origination price only.
So I wonder if that means they'll start the auction at $1 and it'll quickly go to 10 million. Right.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Right.
But look at that ship. Look at that sexy thing up at the top there. What do you guys think that is? That is amazing.
It is.
I did get sent this photo, and it is like without the writing over it, and you can see like boosters and humans.
Mm-hmm.
So I would assume it's a opal, as is like the combination of those two races.
Yeah.
So a Beast ship, is that what you mean?
I think it's opal that is human.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. But it's hard to say which one it is. It doesn't seem too big because you can see like the people and their characteristics. So it might be like a medium or a large, small.
Yeah,
maybe.
that looks like it's in the distance though too. So it's hard to say, but man, it's a nice looking ship.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So let's lead on to some of the new ship pros. This one isn't really new because we've had the R8 before, and that's refuel repair. But it's nice to see those roles kind of split. We haven't seen a refuel ship in this new galactic asset offering. So, yeah, let's go on to the first one. The Pierce R6 small repair. It's good to see some of these new ship pros be spread out across all of the sizes. It gives it a bit more. Each player, like if they don't have a large budget, they have more choices available to them still, which I like.
Yeah, I love the fact that they have a more affordable repair ship. I think that's going to help a lot of the people who can't afford the big stuff.
Yeah. And you know, it's interesting. I mean, in this early stage of all games, you know, it's kind of like a land grab, an asset grab. And so, you know, I mean, I've got a lot of ships, but what I like is the concept of a person could literally say, you know what? I'm going to get one rescue ship, and that's what I'm going to do. That's going to be my business. That's all I'm going to focus primarily on. I might get something later for just kind of sport, but my business is rescue, and this is my ship. And that a person can do that. I think that's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Also, the fact it's called the Pierce R6 is really interesting since we have the Pierce R8. So is this going to be like a mini version of it?
Right.
That'd be quite cool. And moving on, there's the Busan Golden Flow large repair. And it's really great to see some Busans in this. We're going to move on to that later.
There's quite a few of them.
That's very Borg looking.
Yeah, it is. It is, isn't it? That looks like a cargo ship, though. You know, I think we're going to get to cargo or transport or freight, but
I like it the most. It's one of my faves.
that one,
Yeah.
yeah, that's a good-looking ship.
Especially how you board it.
This is the Rainbow Arc listed as the bottom one.
Arc.
You'll get used to our high prices for repair. Resistance is futile.
Just pay up, sucker.
One cool thing about this picture is how small these people are right here. Like you can barely even see them unless you zoom right in.
Little
So
specks on the
this thing
yeah.
is absolutely
Wow.
huge.
What's
that's
kind of
amazing.
bizarre to me about this ship, though, is that it literally looks like patchwork.
Yeah. So is that functional, or is it just a sign of a
Right.
long life in space? You know,
Is it design? Is it functional? Or yeah, like you said, is it just out of necessity and use and abuse?
because if I recall, the other rainbow ship, the Rainbow Ohm, didn't have as much patchwork on it, right?
No, the Ohm is sleek and clean. Yeah.
So that's all of the repair ships. There is now the R8, the R6, and Busan Golden Flow.
Awesome.
So next we're going to look at some of the salvage ships. That's new as well. So first one is the Busan Ash of Wind medium salvage.
I can't wait to see what that looks like. So
Yeah.
from a salvage perspective, you know, it's hard to talk about this document without talking about the other document that we're going to talk about later with the risks, the zones, right? The different low and medium and high risk zones. And some of these seem to have more use in different zones. Like I don't see salvage being used in the safe zone.
Right.
Potentially the medium zone and the high risk zone. And I think the same could be said of the bounty hunter ships. And I'll talk more about my perspective on bounty hunters later, but they're really starting to see how these ships might serve different purposes in each zone.
For sure, yeah. And all these Busans have like really long and cool names. It's a mouthful for anyone who's going to have to like say it really quickly.
So I can see on that last one there that there is two different ships that are dedicated to tow haulers. You got a medium tow and a large tow. And so that just makes me wonder now, is there do we see that the most likely case for towing is damage due to battle? Or are we thinking like people running out of fuel? Because then you would think just a fuel hauler would be able to get out there like an R8. Or, you know, what is the cause for actually having ships dedicated to towing?
You know, what's interesting is it seems to me that this also applies to that other document where if you have an insured ship and you get obliterated in the high risk zone, maybe a tow hauler is what tows you back and makes your insurance claim, or maybe you pay your insurance claim and the tow hauler comes and gets you. They're really opening up some new possibilities for theory crafting, right? Because we don't know what they really intend to do here.
Yeah, is that are those towers? Are they a part of an association? So do they get the call and they get a percentage of the cut? You know, and the insurance company gets the rest. I mean, yeah, it's curious to see how that's going to play out.
Yeah, so Chip was talking about in the Twitter space how there's dedicated Uber drivers. There's vehicles just for that, so that's to be expected.
You know, Kiranis in chat there brought up another good idea. Maybe it's to tow around space stations or motherships too, right? That don't have their own propulsion and just move it into different orbits.
Yeah. And also, if you're going to be destroying ships, there's a small chance that you'll be able to like recover enough to remake it. So that may not have like working boosters. You may need to tow that to like a repair yard to be able to get it back to full functionality.
Mm-hmm. What else we got there, Fancy?
So another thing we saw is mining ships.
Atlas miners.
Finally.
Very interesting. So it seems both of them are called the Armstrong, the Imp Tap, and the Armstrong Imp.
So we learned in Foundation that the Armstrong manufacturer has a monopoly on mining equipment, right? So they're going to be anything that's Armstrong is going to be mining, whether it's in space or on the ground, I'm assuming. And we had a conversation prior to going live here about how this is probably a neutral manufacturer because everyone needs the equipment. But I think it's great that we're starting to see the industry side of the ships come into play now too.
Mm-hmm.
For sure.
So I wonder how much of that goes hand in hand with them having developed lore and things within Star Atlas and starting to kind of build out that framework. Michael mentioned, I think on either on our interview or maybe it was, I think it was on our interview about things that he had seen with regards to planetary systems and layout and things like that. So yeah, I'd love to be a fly on the wall to know how far along some of these concepts have been planned, so that a person can, decide to be a miner. When I vision a capital miner, that's a good sized vessel.
That's a big ship, yeah.
But and so when you have, let's say, a meteor out in deep space or somewhere that's got a high demand resource, you find it. It's not like, hey, we found it, now we got to go get mining equipment out of here. It's like, get to mining.
Yeah,
Right.
and it stands to reason that it probably has processing as well, right? Which is something you normally have to do at a space station, but maybe that ship, due to the size, does mining and processing.
Right.
Yeah. If you're in deep space, then it might not be best like wanting to stick around all the time. If you could just fill up what you can and get out of there, that'd be quite ideal for like the Diamond Planet.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder what the distinction between the two is. Like, what makes the Armstrong Imp potentially like 4 or 5 times higher than the TAP? Maybe you need both of them to fulfill something, or the TAP only does half the job.
It'll be interesting if it's resource based too. Can the larger one only mine certain resources? It'll be interesting if resources are locked by the size of the mining equipment that you have.
Yeah,
that could always be the case. There's just resources that are just harder to mine.
Do we have have we gotten any further with an answer from anyone, whether it's in Foundation or elsewhere, about the distinction between a transport and a freighter?
I believe it's people, but I've always wondered if it was more. Yeah.
I think if you just look at the Lobi, which is a small, extra small or a small transport vehicle, I think transport just moves people. I think it's 100% a people mover.
Because that one's they had a large transport there.
Yeah, they have quite a few transports on this.
And we've seen the Lobi, right? It's the lowrider vehicle.
The Opal bit boat.
Taxi.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's 2 transport, Ogrika and Yorick, extra small transport. It's going to be quite interesting how they're putting them on the low end. Like, I know a lot of people might not have got like a medium-sized transport because you want to protect that, so it's not the only thing you want to get, and that just gets expensive.
I mean, I could see an instance where, like, the part that will eventually play out is you will have plenty of people that want to participate in Star Atlas and don't even have a ship. So let's say that your entry point, once you log in, you're probably going to be at one of the main faction starports, like whichever faction you choose. So regardless of whether you have any assets, you're going to have to choose a faction. And so let's say you choose the ONI faction. Once you log in, you're probably going to be dropped into the major starport in the safe zone. If you feel like going anywhere else beyond there, you're probably going to need some transportation. So I could see how, a person could even have a business around hauling people point A to point B.
Yeah, and I think there's also there's a gameplay loop for NPCs as well, right? In Elite Dangerous, which is what I'm playing right now to kind of get my space chops, my flying chops in, is some of the quests or some of the missions are transporting people who want to go from one station to another. So it seems like an easy way to do some low-level questing as well.
Right.
So out of all of these, I'm guessing the Opal Rayfam is going to be one of the most interesting. Small data runner, the only one there, and it's definitely going to get a lot of attention.
Well, there's some ships in there. I love the small ships because they're approachable, right? You don't have to spend a fortune on them. And they allow you to play the game the way you want to play it. So I see about 5 different ships there I'm probably going to pick up just to be able to play those loops.
Yeah, and this one on the side right here is one of my favorites for sure.
Yeah.
We've seen it a couple times in the past. It's been hinted towards us. We've seen it here. I thought it was something bigger, perhaps. And then it was also one of the options on the poll we did a couple weeks ago.
What do we think the function is of that tail?
It could be picking up those. I don't know what they're called, emergency pods. That you can like fit on the back there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So the reason I'm assuming it's like an evac vehicle is because the description on the poll it did. So it was number 1, and that was titled "Press X for emergency." So looking at that, you can kind of assume it might be the small rescue. There's 3 calicos on this page, and it's a freight, fighter, and a rescue. So that's my guess.
So of those pods, we've seen those pods before, but it's really hard to get an idea of scale. How many we think a ship like this could hold? Let's say that, you had 4 of them floating in space. Is that going to be capacity for this small thing?
Yeah, I think that's a good call. I think 4 is probably max. I mean, you don't really get an idea of the cargo bay here, but I'm just assuming based on the size of the people running around the picture to the right there, 4 seems appropriate, unless it attaches them to the outside somehow.
Yeah, if you zoom in, I'm zooming on my laptop on the back end, and it seems like there's 2 sections on the facing side, and then maybe 2 on the other, or it's just horizontal. I don't know if it clamps on to the side vertically.
So they never even enter the ship, is what you're saying there?
Yeah, I think they would just possibly stay as they are, get connected, and then get transported.
Yeah, very cool ship. What is your favorite out of all of these, do you think? I think the Opal Shark is going to be, just the name makes me think it's going to be popular.
The Busan Thrill of Life, and it's a fighter.
Yeah. They've gone for some interesting names this round. When we get through some of the other ships, you look at some of the names, you're like, really?
Yeah, I got to go with the Opal, the Rayfan. It's just like the 2 of the best names in the world, and it's a data runner, which is just like the next best thing. There's going to be a definite need for that, so that's a no-brainer.
Yeah, let's go through all of the Busans. There's a Busan Pulse, extra small racer. That'll be interesting to see what differentiates that from like a Opal Jet or a Pierce X4. And I was quite surprised that all of these extra small transports are there. It's going to be like a completely different game than I was imagining.
So the Lobie is an extra small, and then the Ogrika is an extra small. So we can expect a small 2-person vehicle for the Ogrika, right? That's what we're kind of envisioning.
Yeah. Maybe I think the extra smalls are bikes, extra smalls are cars, smalls are, what are they? Like trucks, I guess. Yeah. So let's go. The Busan Ash of Winds, medium salvage. The Busan Golden Flow. All of these names, they're either like really happy or really sad.
Golden Flaw. That's funny.
Like Busan Dark Dance. That's going to be a very
large
popular
bounty
one.
hunter. Is that like rounding up a whole gang? I mean,
right? And they've got
they'll see you coming.
They've got the other one, the Calico Skip Trace, which I think is an awesome name for a bounty hunter ship, right?
That is a good name.
So moving on to capitals, we have looked a bit at the ground and the minor vehicles. I do think it's quite interesting the Visas Ballad is up here because we've seen that before, and I think it looks
Is that
great.
the Visas Ballad?
Yeah, it is. It's a capital.
That's a beautiful ship.
So when they're saying ground, is that just a ship that does not have flight? It's completely terrestrial?
That was the implication in Foundation when the question was asked about the ship, that it's a terrestrial-based vehicle.
Interesting.
Which leads me... I'm sorry, go ahead, Jesse.
No, you're probably on the same path. I'm curious what that means for land play. If you're going to invest 25, 30 grand in a ship that never leaves the planet that it's on, hopefully there's a gameplay loop to support that.
That's what I was thinking as well, that they're, in the past they've talked about having some sort of first person contingent in the metaverse, right? And it seems like that may be what we're seeing here is the first piece of that, or we're seeing something that allows cargo to move maybe from one mining claim to another, perhaps.
Or
I mean, it's called
perhaps
Toter.
it could be like a Mortal Engines type thing, like a flying city that can implant itself and just move around.
Yeah, because that is a strange thing when you think about it from a function standpoint. I mean, here we are, Earth 2022, and we don't have 300-meter vehicles that cruise around on the land itself, maybe in a ship, but in the ocean. So that's interesting to have something that large. I could see having rovers and smaller vehicles, but yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see what you do with a capital ship on the ground.
I guess it would be one of those lines of defense. I'm thinking when it comes to just your planet being attacked, or wherever that part of the planet is being attacked. It would be.
But how would you get that around? You know what I mean? That's one of the challenges with big equipment is like getting it over terrain.
Yeah, I would love to see or hear more details on it because maybe it can go out of orbit, but not for long, and then it would need some assistance, I guess.
Yeah, and we've talked about in the past the idea of having mining claims be attackable and needing defense as well. But again, the name is what kind of seals it for me. To me, this tells me it's a ground-based cargo transport of some sort.
So moving on to commanders, and this background image is just crazy, really. Tooth of Spirit, anomaly class, so on the same tier as Tree Arrow.
So did we find out, like, is that organic material rather than just, aesthetics to make it look like a rock? Is that actually some form of organic?
That's a good question. I don't think we've heard the answer. I think everyone just assumes it's a combo of rock of some sort and machinery.
I think I have heard that they are sentient, but maybe I'm wrong. I'm sure we'll be enlightened soon by our audience.
If you know in the audience, let us know.
And then there's the Thimble Bios tank ship. That just sounds amazing. It's a fighter, so most of the big Thimbles have been bombers so far. That'd be interesting.
Yeah, I'm curious what that Tooth of Spirit's going to look. Is that what we're looking at there? That is the Tooth of Spirit?
I'm pretty sure that's what we're looking at there.
Okay, yeah. And it's interesting in its shape as well, because it doesn't really look like it was designed necessarily for flight, but that's just something that we think of in terms of atmosphere. You know what I mean? When you don't have an atmosphere, although that does look like it's in the atmosphere.
Right. Yeah.
It got clouds behind it.
Yeah, I'm thinking this is going to be a stationary type of situation in an asteroid belt, along with all the other Tufas just hanging around. This is the ultimate ambush vehicle.
What do you think those canisters are? You see two of them. There's a canister with flames behind it off to the right, and then one at the bottom. It looks like some sort of propulsion, but do you think it's weapon systems, or do you think that's some sort of ship?
Looks quite big to be a ship. No, to be a weapon, I mean, like a shell.
But it's the same size of those ones that are stacked on top.
Oh yeah, sure enough. Yeah, maybe it's a drone of some sort.
Yeah.
Somebody in chat, Blarg, he said it looks like coral, and he's kind of right. It does have a coral look.
I was thinking that too. Yeah.
Ra Mega's telling us it sounded like it was part sentient and part machine. Not a lot of info on it other than that. I'm not sure how it's going to work.
And I think it's... Go ahead, Jesse.
And say if that is the case, then that raises the question: can you provide it some resource and it then it self repairs?
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, there's a lot they could do with it. That's for sure. And I think this is the kind of ship we'll see out near the Cataclysm, right? Because we now know that the Tufa, from an NPC perspective, surrounds the Cataclysm or lives in that area. So this is kind of end game ships that we're seeing here that you could buy.
Yeah. Right. So going down to Titan ships finally.
Man. What a beauty.
Yeah, this picture is amazing. And
It's a golf course.
first thing to talk about is all of these 4 Titans. There's 4 of them now, 1 for each faction, and a Thimble, which I assume will be neutral.
But where will it live? That's the question, right? We've been having this conversation around Titans and their impact on different factions, and now we're breaking that mold into a fourth one.
Now, when we have a ship that is faction specific, what limitations does that bring with it? Does that mean that if one of these Titans is not in the ONI faction, it can't enter that airspace? I mean, or does it just mean that it can only be owned by someone within that faction? Like, what does that mean to be faction specific? Or is it just created by the alien race that's associated with the faction?
Yeah,
I got the impression from Foundation that it's going to live within the faction, but this, like I said, kind of breaks that mold.
Yeah.
And that they said they weren't going to be, they weren't going to take away from everyone else's play style if this moves into the area, whatever that means. Sorry, Ray, go ahead, man.
No, I was going to say the last time we had Chip on, or the only time we had Chip on, it was still an open-ended type of situation, but he did allude to how it's going to be lore-based. For every one of these Titans, it's going to have an impact and a direct association with the lore. So he did mention how it could just be a stationary faction lock of a ship, but then if it moved not so far, so we were still like kind of going back and forth with all that. Maybe they already have an idea and they're just wanting to get more information from the community as time goes on. But yeah.
Do we think that what we're looking at there is a tree arrow for scale?
Yeah, that's a tree arrow
sure.
in the bottom right with the Super Phoenix in the middle.
So
And what is the other ships?
They are Grenadiers and
Bombarella.
Bombardiers, and I
Bombarella,
assume there's like a Unabomber, which is a spec.
So we've seen close-ups of the tree arrow. So based on those 2 right there, it almost looks like that top area for the tree arrow is about the size of that front end on the Titan way up
Pretty much.
over there, which
Wow.
means those other areas are just massive.
Wow.
That's like districts, like the difference between a village and a city.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing. So what I don't see anywhere, and maybe it's just not shown in the picture, is a place for the smaller ships to dock. Like, could a tree arrow dock there somewhere?
Oh, for sure. Multiple.
You think so?
Pretty sure.
Yeah,
Smaller ships probably on the underbelly. There's probably some bays that
Lots
open
of
up.
room there.
Yeah, like on the PSC 11, there's the massive bay underneath that you can go in.
Yeah,
I think that's actually on the side, that one.
Perhaps, yeah. But yeah, Visa's Tenant, that is one we haven't heard before. Seems like it was rounded. They added it to kind of balance the factions out a bit, which makes sense.
and all fighters except for this big beast here is a bomber, huh?
Yeah, so that's kind of, it's like a unique one.
It's really interesting. I mean, how big of a bomber do you need at this point? Every time we see these big bombers, they show us another huge one.
Bigger and bigger.
Right? It almost seems like the gas wouldn't be worth the trip. You want to take something smaller.
What would be interesting is if this actually, because we know the bombs are terraforming, so are those bubbles the pieces that produce the terraforming stuff? Like they pull the different greenery or different animals. I guess we really haven't learned about that, but I'm wondering if those bubbles are more than just leisure. Maybe there's some sort of production involved.
Yeah, I'm assuming that they're just for atmosphere, but yeah. But and that design on them probably is just to make them strong. You know, it's probably some form of space age clear metal. You know.
Yeah, you can see they're hexagonish in shape from the zoom in. But I could imagine there's going to be just whole different ecosystems, cities, people living. If anything, this is all you need if you're going to play the game. You probably don't even need land claims. You could grow everything from there. You can.
Yeah, this is Darnassus, pretty much.
So that's another thing. Like someone's asking, like, is this atmosphere? And we see a number of ships where it looks like the ships are within the atmosphere, and these things just look like such beasts that. And we see propulsion. So that's an interesting thing, like between these ships. So propulsion suggests that they're propelling the ships through some fuel source. As where if you're going to have a big beast of a ship like that within the atmosphere, it's got to be anti-gravity. There's no way you're going to use propulsion to like move that thing around within the clouds.
Yeah, and if these things are killable, what's going to be its big weakness? Do you just crack one of those domes, or is there like an exhaust vent that you're supposed to drop a bomb into?
Wow.
Yeah, the shield capacities for these are going to just be extraordinary.
Mm-hmm.
The amount of work it'll take just to maybe get through the shields.
Well, they talked about in Foundation about what would be needed to actually take one of these down, and they didn't say they were invincible, but they sure made it sound like they were pretty close to invincible.
They said 4,000 X4s.
Yeah.
And 4 to 6 weeks of battling it.
Right.
Can you imagine that in real time, that battle? That'd be one for the books.
Yeah, and 27 million rounds of ammunition.
There you go.
Yeah, so a lot of ships. We haven't counted them up, but there's a ton to choose from if you're looking for anything.
Yeah, and I'm also, I mentioned this before the show that I was curious how the quantities were going to compare. Because we're in this interesting place right now where, and I say place, the industry as a whole, more projects coming into the space, which means that we're essentially sharing the current audience that is crypto savvy folks who also are into gaming, because the game world is not fully on board in the space and at that pace. So my question is that what is going to be the impact over the next 3, 4, 6 months on existing ship values? My assumption is that they're going to be stressed a bit more because there won't be as much buying pressure for the current ships when you have a lot more ships coming on the market. And will the community be able to grow to match the number of ships that they're making available with each of these ship drops? Is it going to be gauged based on interest? Like what is the plan? And also, I wasn't on the last call, but I'd be curious to know, like, is Star Atlas ready to engage in marketing to be able to get that reach out there to match as many ships that looks like they're going to be dropped?
It's funny you bring that up, Jesse, because they did specifically talk about the fact that they're now going harder into marketing going forward to draw the right crowds in. And in regards to spreading out the available wealth throughout the ecosystem, I agree. I mean, just alone, and I think a few of us agree here, keeping up on projects that look good. There's just more and more projects that are starting to come out that I'm just tapped. I don't have any more money to give multiple projects. And now we're kind of stuck. Or at least personally, I'm stuck on a few versus going after a bunch.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. And ships like the Thimble Bios Ranger, the medium data runner, that's going to go after like the Visas Opods market share, really. And where is it? The Thimble Bios Butch, which sounds like a beast, that's going to go after the Agrica Thripid, and that's going to be available to everyone. So it would be cool to get some like extra value from all these early ships.
The Busan Dark Dance.
Yeah, that's got a lot of attention. Multi rolls are really cool.
There's 2 multi rolls there in the large. I didn't see any other multi rolls in any other sizes. Were there any? Those are the only 2 multi rolls in the Gal?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So Rainbow Arc, that's going to be, it's a large freighter, so they already have the medium freight. So
that's been confirmed to be this one.
Yeah.
And I think it's quite cool that it's the Pierce MR8. So how different will that be to the Pierce R8, which is the repair refuel, which is already kind of a multi-role. So this could be more general, I guess, compared to that. Maybe it doesn't have the arms and like the refueling tanks, but it's the same type of vehicle.
So based on what we've seen so far, what are you guys interested in?
Well, it depends what the Busan Dark Dance looks like. I do like the multi-role function just in general, and I've got a Calico hero at the moment. So upgrading like size class is always something on people's mind.
You know, for me, honestly, I mean, I will probably find a couple of ships that I just really like, but I already have more ships than roles that I can personally support. And I guess for me personally, I'm kind of wanting to better understand the lore and how they'll be used rather than just continuing to ape into ships. Even though I think these ships are amazing, I'm kind of in a ship holding pattern.
Yeah, especially with land coming soon, right? Or Scream. It's now Scream, and I don't quite know what the S is yet, but we've got Scream, which is coming, and that's going to take away some of my available capital as well, I'm sure.
Yeah, I agree.
I would like to know more on the building of the ships, more details on that, because if any of the ships that I'm interested in are able to be built, then I would forego buying them and just save money for the claims and then more polis, because all of that is technically more important.
One of the things that was shared in response to buying a built ship versus buying a GAO ship is it's been confirmed that the second round of ships will also include crew and components, where ships purchased won't, right? So there is a difference there.
Has there been any more talk about what the future benefits will be of the length of time that you have a ship committed to missions? Like where we can see now, like I can see a bunch of mine say hardened fleets because they've been in operation for quite some time. Has there been any hints as to what the benefit will be for longevity?
All I've heard is that's cosmetic. It's purely a reflection of your time spent staking. It won't have any benefit.
Yeah, I find it interesting too, because they said the same thing about posters for the rebirth, and then there was some type of airdrop or happening around that. So there might be a change.
For now, there isn't utility, but there's nothing stopping them from making time valuable, which makes sense when you're using money. That's the equation.
Yeah, you don't hear too much about those posters anymore, do you? I think the last thing you hear now is people got more than their expected value out of them, and you don't hear too much. But they got a lot of different things going on in a bunch of different ways. So.
Well, we still don't really completely know the value because there's many things that as a poster holder that you received as a drop that we don't know the actual MSRP on yet. For example, the difference between tier 1 through tier 5 mining claims, things like that. So there's still some unknown as to what the overall real value is of the posters. But I think most people are, as you're suggesting, were quite happy with what they've gotten as a result of having them.
I mean, I've gotten everything I've gotten today through my posters by just buying them right and selling them right and taking some of the assets and selling them. So almost all my assets that I've purchased in Star Atlas, or I would say 75%, are done through the posters. They've been really good to me.
Yeah.
And there's some good data that the team will have for knowing who are actually the buyers and the holders of ships. So those might be rewarded before the flippers, who might have reached a rank lower before hardened. So there's a lot they can do with all the data they have on who's been holding since day one.
Yeah, one of the things that came out of the town hall that I thought was really awesome was the idea that they're going to be leaning heavier into a browser-based game that has a 3D component to it. I think that's a huge win for people who want to do things like scholarships and things like that, because hopefully it can be done on your phone to some degree. And it just requires an internet connection and doesn't require a high-end PC.
Yeah, I agree. That's going to be really cool. I've never played O game, but moving to 3D definitely does sound more appealing to gamers in general.
Yeah.
And the upcoming marketplace, that's going to be really cool as well. I like how they talked about peer-to-peer trading coming soon. So being able to trade a specific ship to a specific person easily, that'll be a really good function for guilds, for example. It'd be easier to reward people, or for people to sell assets to other specific people.
Is that basically an escrowed wallet-to-wallet transfer? Is that how you envision that?
Yeah, and all of the other marketplace changes that will be coming along with it, like making it more like a game and auction house type system. Michael goes into more detail on it on the town hall.
Jesse, don't have your bank accounts open on your screen right now. They're trying to
Yeah.
figure out what you're looking at. Okay?
Nothing on my screen except what you guys see.
So yeah, this is also another thing that was released during the town hall. Public document about all the security risk zones, medium risk zones and high risk zones, and all the different things about it. It's really interesting. But one thing to note before starting that this is to encourage transparency and discussion, but they can change because it's still quite a while off.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this document's leading to a lot of dialogue and foundation. There's a lot of people who have questions, not only about this particular graphic, which we've seen before, but also the details that came with it.
Yeah.
So how much do you, so if we just take a look at this map for a moment, and there's going to be, let's see, the safest place, and again, what I think is legacy real estate is going to be in those security zones.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get out from there, you see how you have medium risk even on the backside, that small space out there. So if we just take a look at ONI in the purple there on the left, that whole ring of medium, you still have the ability to fight and attack out there, even people in your same faction. My question is that if a person takes the time to leave mud and they cross open the big open space over there, are they free to just hang out? Do they just need a faction passport? And what happens if they don't? What if, can they get across the boundary? Is there going to be like some Pierce police vehicle, like spot checking people for documents? Papers, please.
I'm in the understanding that it's not without risk. So you will travel through deep space to get from one security zone, mud to ONI, which will require some sort of protection. But now having played some other games, where Metagonzo, he asked during the town hall a question about how deep is space going to be where you don't see anybody, and frankly in some of the other games when you're flying from system to system you don't see anybody at all,
right?
And I'm wondering if that's what it's going to feel like going from ONI to mud with the faction passport, or is there going to be built-in NPC interdictions or ways for pirates to jump in? I don't think it's going to be without some risk.
Yeah. So when going through the high risk zone, you would need insurance, and they talk about that a bit more during this, about how you'll be able to customize your insurance policies. But say, for example, we do want to go from ONI to mud, it would be cheaper insurance-wise to go through OM4 and OM3 compared to the inner ones, because they charge a higher premium. And then the same again with the high risk zone.
Interesting.
So yeah, let's go on to the security zones. It's called the SCZ, and we've referred to this in the past as like the safe zone. But yeah, just the easy way to think of it, this is the zone where there is security. So in the ONI, mud, or Uster.
Mm-hmm.
So each faction has a security zone which is intended to be the safe zone and social area for players, as implied by the name. The Council of Peace factions provide security within the zone boundaries, and combat crime is strictly prohibited. Consensual combat is permitted via a combat hailing/acceptance system similar to dueling. Consensual combat/dueling loot in the security zone is anything that is staked as part of the deal. Complete destruction of assets not possible. And yeah, this was I really enjoyed this description, because it seems dueling is going to be something that'll be like more about friendliness and trying to see who's better than about getting loot, unless you do decide you want to stake. So right. One of the big advantages, this being on the blockchain, if you like try to duel someone for money in World of Warcraft and they lost, they would probably just log out and wait till you go up. Yeah, so
Rage
it's kind
quit.
of all officiated, which I think sounds really cool. Make some good esports.
I'm just laughing at the term consensual combat.
Right.
Yeah, I like
Yeah.
the wording.
They go into like combat stances quite a bit during this.
Well, I wonder if there'll be any, guild to guild conflict or something that's settled in consensual combat. Maybe you stake up. Maybe the stake isn't an item. Maybe a stake is a planetary system or something. And you take your best fighter and put it up against their best fighter. I think that'd be pretty cool. It's like racing for titles,
Right.
Reputation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So moving on to medium risk zones. Does anyone else want to take this?
Sure,
Sure.
I got it, man.
All right.
Medium risk zones are outside the faction security zones. Players entering these zones acknowledge and accept the medium risk of combat from NPC pirates, raiders, and potentially other players. The NPC enemies in these zones can be dangerous to new players and a nuisance to experienced players. Non-consensual PvP combat is possible, but disincentivized via bounty mechanism. Complete destruction of assets is not possible in the medium risk zone, but reclamation of fees are increased.
Yeah, thanks,
There's a lot
Banjo.
there. Yeah.
So Chypto, he described this as a fringe zone with bounty mechanics. And I think when it comes down to this, is if you can say yes to one of these three questions, you'll be fine doing combat in the medium risk zone. So can you kill any bounty hunters that come for you? Can you outrun them, or can you hide?
So a few things that I seem to recall in lore somewhere along the way about the medium risk zone is that if you are not wanting to participate, then you get some kind of a shield up buff for being a non-combatant, as where so that gives you somewhat of an advantage over someone that may just go around attacking people. And then of course there is security. So and what does that mean? Let's say that you do. What is security going to do? Do they attack you? Do you have the potential of losing your ship? Not losing it, but getting reset. What are the consequences of attacking people if the popo do show up?
So I think I can.
It's up. No, it was up. It's combat stances.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, don't mind if I do. Players are able to set up their fleets into passive and aggressive stances. So, players in passive stances will have temporary defense buffs in the event they get attacked, but they cannot initiate combat. So, passive fleets have lower energy signatures and are only detectable at shorter ranges. Players in aggressive stances are able to freely initiate combat, but have higher energy signatures. Attacking passive players in the medium risk zone will incur a bounty.
There we go.
Yeah, it's quite cool because if two aggressive players attack each other, does that mean there is no bounty? I assume so.
Right.
And it also really caters to all the different types of players. So people never might want to leave the security zone, but even if they do go into the medium risk zone, they can be passive and just do their thing. And if someone does get them, they can just put a big nice bounty on them when they respawn.
Well, it seems like there's a way to grief here. So it seems like if you have two passive people, if one of the passive people can, frustrate somebody into attacking them, so then now that person's got a bounty, and then that person who got attacked, their bounty hunter ship can come in and kill that ship for the bounty. It seems like there's a way to game that if you're all the same group of people.
It's anti-bullying.
Unless you're a skilled smartass just going around in a bounty ship taunting people.
There you go.
So the high risk zone includes the 4 quadrants between each of the medium risk zones in the Cataclysm. Upon entering the high risk zone, the bounty mechanism is lifted through incurred bounties persists. Enemy NPCs are moderate to high level threats. Optimal insurance packages can be used to mitigate the risk. Without insurance, permanent loss of assets is possible. The insurance increases each further zone you go into. Yeah.
And this is something that created a ton of questions to Chypto and in Foundation. And I think it's fair to say that they don't have the details on this worked out. I don't even think they know if it's going to be done by Star Atlas or a third party to do the insurance.
Yeah, and he described this as free for all, PvP conquest, and high level mobs, which sounds quite cool, but scary with real assets on the line. And one thing to note from this is it says when you return from a high risk zone, the bounty hunters will still come after you. It's just they won't go after you in high risk. It's just put on pause, basically.
It's interesting, the bounty. Well, I think we're going to talk about bounty hunting a little bit more here, so I'll save my thoughts for that.
Yeah, okay, let's move on to that. It was nice to hear about them talk about insurance here. They go into it in more detail as well at the bottom. Right, so bounty hunting. Anyone want to?
Miscreants and troublemongers will likely feel motivated to commit criminal offenses in the MRZs. Such offenses include, but will not be limited to, attacking NPCs in a passive stance in the MRZ, theft, destruction, and harvesting assets, be it ore, data, ships, crew, etc. You do not have permission or rights to. And 3, disabling or tampering with COP security measures, including attempts to wash bounties via hacking. So that's cool that those things are actually possibilities.
Yeah, it gives people like the option to go on a long crime spree, really, and then just hack away their records at the end of it. You just have to be efficient, I mean.
Bounties are cumulative for continuous crimes and are locked to the aggressive ship/fleet and not the crew. So that's kind of nice. You know, if you're a crew member on a ship that commits a crime, you know, you're like, hey, dude, I didn't sign on for this.
Right.
But it does kind of condemn the whole fleet for the actions of a ship if they're paired together. I guess that means like one player controlling it. I guess it wouldn't really punish everyone if one person acts out.
Yeah. Criminals will quickly be acquainted with COP security measures in the MRZs. What is that suggesting?
They'll just be patrolling around, I assume, and they'll be looking for them.
Or automated drones, maybe, that attack as you go by based on your bounty status.
And the next sentence, calling for cop intervention. So if you see someone with a big bounty on them, perhaps all you need to do is just tell the cops, and you can get the money.
Huh?
Yeah.
Players can aid enforcement by ensnaring offenders or calling.
Ensnaring them. So that means tractor beam, right? So you tractor beam a bounty and let the COP come in.
Yeah. Unless you can make a deal right then.
So I guess that's how you get the bounty hunting reward. So it's not for killing them; it's for turning them over to the COP. Is that how you read it?
Yeah, and then the person has to pay a bounty fee to get out of it, which you get, I believe.
It says here players are awarded bounty hunting rewards for doing so. I'm assuming instead of doing do.
Yeah.
This gameplay loop of bounty hunting applies to NPCs and PCs. For NPC bounty hunting, the desired outcome, dead or alive, will be stated in the contract. For hunting PCs with bounties, alive is the desired outcome, up to a certain bounty threshold, and is rewarded in kind.
Yeah, dead or alive. Sounds awesome.
There's some interesting things there. Up at number 2, it implies that you're able to steal, right? Is that how you guys read that?
Oh, yeah,
So,
for sure.
Theft. Yeah, it's just theft.
I mean, I think that's awesome. So now the people who want to be pirates can go out and actually, you know, manage their game style between stealing stuff and how do they quickly reduce their bounty without getting killed.
That's why I think it's quite interesting that pirate DACs are really upset about this article. It really goes into depth about what they are. And I think people are realizing that being a pirate isn't really an intentional choice. It's just something about your actions. If you if you can't control yourself in outer space, then you're going to become a pirate. You might have to like buy a new ship and just learn how to not kill people.
Right.
Real
Go
passive.
back to school.
Yeah. I wonder, I wonder what the play mechanics are going to be. Is there going to be lots of opportunities for theft and destruction and harvesting of assets for NPC vessels?
Yeah, it's cool just imagining going around and harvesting like a whole planet and wiping the data so you can't get caught.
Right.
Yeah. Well, this is going to be fun. I bounty hunting loops is something I wanted to play. I think this gives me a better understanding of how it's going to look. And it's got some good things and some bad things.
So in the MRZ, it's about how far away a cop is from you. That's the amount of pressure you'll draw. So if you're out in the middle of nowhere, there's nothing near you, then you'll be able to get away with worse stuff, I guess. And in the high risk zone, you can pay factions to wash your bounty off again for a price, which is quite cool. So you can either do it yourself or pay someone else to.
And I would imagine also stealth technology. If you've got the money and you've got the modules, and you know those factors should play a role in how quickly you're detected or how quickly you can escape detection.
Mm-hmm. And it goes on again about PvP and loot, but we'll cover this in this chart at the bottom, which just tells us everything pretty much. So asset reclamation, you pretty much use Atlas. So that's another way people are going to be using it in game. When your ship gets destroyed, you'll have to pay a flat amount of Atlas to get it back pretty much if you do. And finally, insurance.
I have mixed feelings on insurance. I think it takes away a little bit of the pucker factor flying out in the high risk zone. However, I understand why people want to, put tens of thousands of ships into the HRZ. But if you can insure your ship and you now have enough income coming in, not have to worry about the insurance, then it becomes kind of moot.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be the case with 8x rewards in deep space or the high risk zone. It might be very risky in the beginning to set it all up to get to that point, but I think that's what's yeah. Go ahead, Jess.
Do we think like the value, is it replacement value? Because I mean, ships that are burned, it's there's no more ships on the market. You just get the money for what your ship was worth.
Yeah, maybe equal value. You can just get a ship with more quantity.
Does your rate go up?
Somebody in the chat said replacement value earlier, so I'm just going to go on the idea that they saw that somewhere. But what I find is interesting, so if you have this big huge cargo ship or this big huge mining ship, whatever you claim in the HRZ can't be insured until you get it back to a place where you can insure it. So there is still some loot that you can get out there by killing some of these larger ships.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and the final point, scanners gain the ability to detect if an asset is insured. I think that's promotes quite like a brutal culture, really. If someone goes all the way out to high risk zone and they go through all the checkpoints like, yes, I want to take more risk, they get all the way to high risk and everyone can see they're uninsured. And one cool thing about it is when you are insured, where is it? They get everything. So compared to if an enemy is insured, they only get the cargo or things collected in high risk. So people who aren't insured are going to be a very sweet target.
Mm-hmm.
That's a strange economy there. I mean, if I'm attacking a ship out in deep space, why should it matter whether they're insured or not as to what I can salvage and get from this ship? Mm-hmm. It doesn't make any sense to me.
It seems there should be some salvageable components at a minimum, right? Some of the pieces of the ship or some resources or even maybe some crew.
Yeah. Or maybe the way they could do it just for gameplay loop is they could say that a ship that is destroyed that is insured, that is the property of the insurance company, and anyone that has that property would essentially I have a bounty on them.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if it is really profitable to kill an uninsured player, what stop people from like luring noobs who aren't insured out to the place where they can just take everything?
Yeah,
Pretty
there
much.
was stories of that in Eve.
Let's go on an adventure.
Yeah, I'm getting RuneScape flashback. Taken out to the woods.
Yep.
Then they'll be on the Discord complaining, right? They'll be the biggest whiners in Discord talking about how
Yeah.
they lost all their stuff.
You had insurance. So you can't blame anybody but yourself now.
Yeah, and I like how Cataclysm, it says 2 for units, really makes it clear how cool Toothers are, really. They're going to have like a really weird gameplay, I assume.
So they're the only thing you'll find in Cataclysm, which is really interesting. I can't wait to see the lore perspective of that.
It says on PvE, so yeah.
Oh, look at Chypto. We should just give Chypto a link and invite him in impromptu to talk about the document.
That's it. We're calling you out. Come on stage. That's it.
So what did he just say there? I want to make sure I understand what he was saying. So
Currently evaluating adding salvageable loot to uninsured and insured. I mean that makes sense. I mean, it's the reason that I was concerned about the economics of it is because that almost is a boost to selling insurance. It's like, why wouldn't you have insurance? Because it becomes a deterrent. You don't want to be the guy out there without it because then you're a target. But at least both ways, insured or uninsured, there was still some salvageable cargo that kind of neutralizes that a little bit.
Yeah. And for those who don't know, Chypto is one of the game system designers for Star Atlas. So thanks for joining, Chypto. And there's his Twitter tag as well. So, it's interesting because this insurance is not an uncommon process in other games. I mean, I'm not sure about you guys, but the games I'm playing that are space games and have some sort of risk area also have insurance. So I'm not upset about that.
So what do we think the cost would be?
Well, I tell you what, if they don't make the cost more expensive than the loss, then you're just going to have people gaming that system.
Yeah.
Right.
So you got a $10,000 ship and you're paying what for insurance? Is this insurance over a window of time? Like, I'm going to be going out into deep space here for the next X number of days. So I'm going to buy a policy for this trip. Or can I say, you know what, for the next period of time?
Well, based on Elite Dangerous, when you die there, the insurance is already there. So it's just a payment. It's not something you have to procure ahead of time. You just pay the insurance, which seems to be the easiest way. But
this is a simulation of reality. So you better prepare beforehand. That would be pretty cool, where it's just like some people might need to, but then it wouldn't make sense if there's battles taking place. It wouldn't need to be like on moment's notice. You just have to fly out there. Would you have time to just pull up to the gas station, get insurance, and then head out to deep space to fight along your men, along your team? So,
yeah. But I think it's great that they released this document. These are the things that get people talking, and I think it also helps them understand the community. And we're asking questions that they probably haven't thought of, not just us, but the community at large, which helps shape the game. So I think it's great that they're releasing this information.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Really looking forward to dueling in the safe zone. That's going to be very lucrative, I believe, if you find people with big egos.
Well, we got Chypto here. If you're still hearing this and you're on with us, we were curious, like, what is the designation of a ground ship?
Yeah.
Does that mean they don't leave the atmosphere? Are they actually just rolling around on the ground? Or is that, what makes that different from other ships, especially considering that some of these are like capital in size?
While he's processing that question, Jesse, hopefully we can get a reverse Q&A going with Chypto in chat. But he said this about the insurance. You don't get your ship back. You get the payout depending on your insurance package. So if you don't have platinum tier, you're not going to get as much, guys. So it's a very complex mechanism. I think, if there's any team that can do it based on what we've seen so far, it's going to be the Star Atlas team that does it and does it well.
Yeah, the foundation is there for them to build off of compared to a lot of other projects that don't have basically anything. So I'm hopeful.
I think we just need to have Chypto on as he can join whenever he wants on screen. So what else do we learn from or go ahead, Fancy.
Oh, just did we get a total count on ships for this this gal? And I'm assuming these are all set up for release this year.
I'll do a quick count.
I thought it was 52 minus the Titans and then also minus the drones that they talked about. So 47 maybe?
Wow.
It's a lot. I think your concern about distribution, though, and price of ships is appropriate short term for sure, right? Because we're going to see some dips that are also generated by where the market's at right now, also. But it's going to be interesting to see who's trading out and how cheap the ships are going to be. You might get some really good deals on some Gen 1 ships for sure.
Yeah, I think there's about 50, and then there's the 3 that are missing, which we mentioned earlier.
Another question, if Chypto is obliged to answer. Oh, he said he'll hop on for a few minutes. We want to get him the link?
Get him, man. Sure. Get him up here.
Oh, awesome.
Lasso Crypto up on stage.
Chypto, we'll give it to you in Discord. You know where we'll find you.
Okay. Tag him.
Yeah.
Look at that. Such a treat.
Now I got to go change the thumbnail again. The second time. He's here. Okay, he's coming in soon. Awesome. Well, this is exciting.
Drum roll for crypto. Yeah.
So if you got any questions for Chypto, I think from the community, now is the right time to put them in chat. Can't guarantee we'll get to all of them, but Chypto is doing us a great service by coming on.
Yeah.
There he is. I'll add him. Oh, there we go. Chypto, how you doing, man?
What's up, guys?
Thanks for joining, man.
Bro?
Yeah, no worries. I know there's been a lot of questions, and that was the whole... Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you.
Loud and clear.
One sec. Let me close YouTube because I'm hearing like twice.
Oh, gotcha.
Can't get enough of Chypto, so I wouldn't mind.
Okay. I think I'm good now.
Awesome.
Yep.
So you were saying that lots of questions and lots of activity around all this new information.
Yeah, and that was the whole point of the drop. We know that there's a lot of questions around what the risk zones are, and just wanted to give some flavor and color to them, talking about why the medium risk zone there's going to be bounty hunting, and then what the actual risks are associated with the high risk zones. And then there's just been this assumption that we want to give players a way to mitigate the risk in the high risk zone, but we want to also make the high risk zone risky intrinsically. So there's a balancing there that we're trying to work through. And especially with all the discussions about the insurance packages. And the insurance packages certainly aren't intended to be a way for us to monetize the game more. It's really a way to allow players to feel like they can still engage in a critical part of the game without risking everything, right?
Yeah, for sure.
I think that's smart. I mean, you're not going to have people taking $100,000 assets if they are going to run the risk of losing everything, right?
Yeah, especially on the lines of quests. If there's going to be any quests that require you to go into different regions, like you wouldn't want to not be able to complete a quest or the storyline in adventure mode if it's a single. So.
Yeah, exactly. There's going to be a lot of content in there, so we want to give a way for players to enjoy that without feeling like they're going to lose the entire bank. But we also don't. It's hard because when you add insurance packages, there's ways there could be economic, ripple effects of there's potential exploits or players reclaiming their money, but then if we drop a loot, then there's inflation of the amount of amount of assets in the game, because now players got a lot of loot for the drop, but then the other player got all their money back. So now you double the amount of money in the economy just because of the PvP that happened.
And since the money is paid back as I guess value of the ship versus the ship, it does incentivize the shipbuilders as well, right? So it creates a more, I guess, churn for them knocking out ships to sell to people who've lost to an insurance claim.
Exactly. So the thoughts that we might add as part of the discussions already going on is that, yeah, you can still, maybe you still get salvageable loot from the insured items, but it's going to be raw materials or crafting materials that need to go back into building a fresh ship again.
Right.
And those won't necessarily be worth the same amount as the ship itself. So a $1,000 ship might drop a couple $100 worth of crafting materials, if I had to just make a guess at the relative distribution of assets there.
Is one of the things that comes to mind for me is it's going to incentivize people to want to go out in space and take that risk if they know that, monetarily speaking, they have less risk. Now, however, you do lose the ship, and so if there is no more of those ships on the market, then you're going to be paying whatever the current market price is to get that ship again. Is there any internal talk, I don't know if you can share this or not, about like the Genesis ships, the ships that have already come out in the first releases? Will there be any potential value to those ships over ships that can be created within the game? Or will it just maybe perhaps nostalgia maybe?
At this point, I could only repeat what Michael Wagner has said publicly, which is that we will want to find a way to designate these Genesis ships such that they're more valuable. Whether that there's been examples of special skins or special metadata associated with those ships, and yeah, if you take a Genesis ship into the high risk zone and lose it, like you're not getting that exact ship back, right? You're getting value of it. So maybe, and I think the insurance doesn't. If you want to pay for like insurance associated with half the value of your ship for a lower premium, then that's possible. It doesn't always have to be all or nothing either. There's customization there.
So Chypto, related to the loss of ships, when you lose a ship in a high risk zone, do you also lose that ship's progress? So anything that, or is the progress tied to the components and the crew and not so much the ship?
So the progress, there's two flavors of progress here, or maybe three. One is that you would lose the components and modules in that ship as well, and there's a lot of progress associated with upgrading those over time. The crew themselves will have experience associated with how good they are at certain ship crew slots. So some of your crew can be really good at the gunner seat versus the pilot seat, and you would, if you lose those crew and you didn't rescue them via the escape pod mechanism, then yeah, you lose that. But you wouldn't lose your count lock progression stats. So your XP associated with your different career licenses of combat and rescue, salvage, and whatnot. So you'd still keep your account locked progression.
Yeah, and I'm going to flip that question. In the safe zone, if you, say, lose to your friend at a duel, would the only thing you lose be your pride?
Much
Door,
more,
right?
much more.
Yeah, that sounds pretty risky. You'd be losing a lot.
I do have a question on the for insurance purposes. Would anything be going back to the treasury? Like, has the team talked about or made plans on, like, if anything was to happen via the split of what someone gets, during a loss of a ship with insurance? Does the treasury get anything so it could keep building in some type of way?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I haven't been having any conversations about the whole DAO mechanism associated with insurance. Really just wrote, like, the team and I, we wrote that article really just to broach the topic of this is the things we're thinking about and this is how we envision it. But yeah, there's probably a whole another article that would need to be written on insurance, and if it goes back into the DAO and how much, and maybe a lot of that's even voted on and not necessarily decided on by
Right.
by ourselves. So yeah,
Cool.
can't really answer specifics on all that.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Yeah.
As we were going through the ship Gao there, we saw the several instances where something was listed as a ground ship. What makes something a ground? Does it not leave the atmosphere? Is it actually rolling on wheels?
Yeah, those are terrestrial assets. So I haven't seen the concepts for them. I don't know if they have wheels or not, but they're intended to be used on the ground. Doesn't mean you can't transport them between planets, but yeah, I think those aren't going to be flying around. They're going to be on the ground.
Yeah,
When
I
you
was expecting ground ships, but I wasn't really expecting capital ground ships.
Yeah.
I'm wondering how like big they would actually be compared to like normal ships.
Yeah, when we think of capital, we think in the neighborhood of like 300 meter.
I have to ping Danny and see the concepts and the rationale behind exactly what he envisions capital ground to be doing. I've been like a lot of the team, the game devs, we've been working on a lot of space-based gameplay loops because, and I think we should add a little clarity on what Scream is, but we've been focusing on space missions and space-based gameplay loops and less focusing on ground and terrestrial things at the moment. So I have to talk to Danny and see what he envisions the ground assets to be used for in the nearest gameplay that would enable them.
Is that the S in Scream space? Is that what it's intended to be?
Yeah, it's a ship configuration, resource extraction, and missions. So emphasis on ship missions, configuring your ships, and then extracting resources in space, and less on land operations.
So is that why we're seeing the new class of ships that we haven't seen before? We're seeing mining, we're seeing salvage, we're seeing towing. Are those all going to be gameplay loops within Scream?
Yeah, so we've had all these roles defined for a while. So those ships would have been coming regardless of Scream. But yeah, Scream is a bit of a pivot for us so that we can make use of all these different ship roles nearer term rather than focusing on land and maybe de-emphasizing all the ships, which wouldn't have been a really good strategic approach. So we realized that pretty quickly and pivoted.
So thanks, Chypto. And within a gameplay loop, let's say mining, for instance, and we have the different size ships, what's the impact of the ship? Is it really just the amount of resources you can harvest, or does the size of the ship impact the type of resource you can harvest?
You're saying with the mining ship?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the size of the ship might open up different types of mining. So like a smaller ship might have more surgical type mining gameplay where you'd focus on really, really dense pockets and asteroids, whereas maybe the capital size ship will just devour the entire asteroid and break it all down.
Awesome.
Go ahead, Ray.
No, go ahead, because it's a totally different topic.
Oh, okay. And I was just going to ask if you could kind of explain what the salvage loop, as you guys know it right now, the salvage loop or the towing loop, what that looks like within Scream.
Salvage is gameplay associated with salvaging things in space. So a lot of derelict or broken down assets or even rescue pods or rescue ships. It's really just salvaging materials in space that are floating around.
Got it.
And even if I imagine when you defeat an enemy ship and it's basically salvage at that point, a salvage ship will be able to handle the acquisition of that loot faster than a ship without a salvage, I guess, specialization.
That's really cool. Yeah. So if you're like a band of mercenaries, for example, if you have a big battle, you could sell that information to a salvage company and that would be valuable to them. When all you'd have to do is like sell a message, for example, the coordinates. I like that.
Yeah, when battles happen, it's not shoot and loot where you literally walk over a corpse and you just pick it up. You'll have to salvage it, and there's time and skill associated with doing that. So that's where salvage ships come into play because they're really efficient at that.
So it'll be similar to like a crafting timer.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
Go ahead.
will salvage be a component on your ship? So, if, for example, in another game that I'm playing, you can, pull down your cargo scoop and pull in what's floating around in space. Is that something that all ships will have functionality to do, and salvage will just do it better, or there'll be some ships that don't have the ability to salvage?
I know that we have salvage drones as one of the modules, and that is intended to increase the efficiency, or even we might even have it where you can't salvage certain assets or certain things without these specializations. So to answer your question, yes, all ships should have some ability to salvage, but we might lock certain more lucrative processes behind salvage ships or salvage drones as a module.
Yeah. I would think that if you had a small ship and that ship didn't have a cargo bay, you probably didn't have any way to leave your ship, then that should, or a tractor beam of some sort, that should limit your ability to do some salvaging.
So can you say that again? I was thinking about something else.
I was suggesting that, there are some ships, you might be in a small fighter, for example. You're able to do some combat, but there's not a cargo bay, and there's really no way for you to leave the ship. So that should prohibit some ability to do salvaging.
Yeah. I believe at this point every ship will have a tractor beam. Okay. So there will be some element of, if you have cargo space and your tractor beam is advanced enough to do the salvage associated with what's in front of you, then yes, you can salvage it and put it in your cargo. I think that answers your question.
Yeah.
I did have a question on mining. So is there going to be a difficult, well, I'm sure there is, but if you can clarify, does medium miner versus a large miner? So are there going to be abilities to upgrade the medium miner to then do the same job of a large miner ship? Is there like a am I not going to be able to mine certain resources with a medium compared to a large?
At this point, haven't really created mineable assets yet that are locked to certain sizes. It's really tied to efficiency and the volume at which you're operating. That doesn't mean we won't add that, but it's not currently spec'd out.
Right, because I imagine the diamond planet, once it's found, what type of machinery and level do you need to be of a miner?
Yeah, like we're looking right now, we're focusing on security zone and then medium risk zone stuff. So haven't really identified anything that would require a large miner at this point. But that doesn't mean a large miner can't be used to speed things up or really eat through larger assets faster.
Sure. Okay. Thanks.
We saw, or somewhere I saw that it suggested that 3 of the things that are not on the ship Gao are drones. The drones that I've seen so far, I've seen the exploratory drone, the one that you see in a lot of the images with the Calico Guardian. And then I think we've seen other images or art that suggests a combat-oriented drone. Are these drones, are they limited to, meaning do you have to have a ship to utilize these drones? Will these drones potentially be used on, say, for instance, mining or planetary systems or spaceports? Like, what will be the requirement for using a drone?
On a ship, the ship needs a drone port that can support those drones, and then space stations will likely have drone ports as well that can be used to help operate the space station or defend it.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, that's exciting. Do we know like what the other drone type will be, and where are those accurate? One exploratory, one that looks like combat, and what, maybe repair?
Yeah, so far I think those are the ones we've released as far as just hinting at them.
Yeah.
I have a feeling that we haven't spec'd out all the other drones. At least I haven't seen it, but I have a feeling that over time we will have drones associated with a lot more of the careers. So refueling drone or scanning drone or drones that are very specific in their function or utility. We've just only talked about those 3 so far.
No. Is there anything that stands out for you as a part of this recent ship release, or just anything associated with the zones that you're excited about?
I did drop on the Twitter space that my favorite ship so far is the Rainbow Arc, and that's in the brochure. Yeah, so I love the Rainbow Arc for reasons that will become clear once we drop the concept art, the full concept art. And then I'd love to talk about that when I'm able to, but it's such a cool ship.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Ray.
No, I was going to say, I can probably theory craft a reason. So as you can see, it to just get in the ship, these panels kind of move around. So I'm thinking if you're about to get attacked by a ship that's larger, more plates can be maneuvered, or I don't know how it's going to happen, but they can all reposition themselves to be a larger or thicker shield versus not, or maybe expand to be larger because you see a lot of overlapping of these plates. So there might be more room than expected. Or you can, as we've seen in photos, you can see them, these individual plates moving things around humans and cargo. So I feel like there's going to be a lot of utility inside and out, which is why I love the ship.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah. Makes you wonder if it can actually transform and change shape.
Pretty much, yeah.
Well, the Rainbow Chi can't it? There's that picture of it like twisting around in space.
RoboCop. Yeah. Or Terminator, sorry. Getting my movies confused here.
And I'm curious what the inside of that one looks like. I mean, the other one had an art gallery and looked pretty decked out and luxurious on the inside.
I think we have seen some pictures. I'll have a look around.
Winston, shout out to Winston in our images channel on our Discord. You can find one there that he posted, and there's a shirtless man behind a big crate box. I don't know what's going on. But if you zoom in,
it's lonely in space, Ray.
Yeah, so he's just doing something back there with someone, or maybe by himself. But it's a work environment, so I don't know what's going on.
I think there was a question earlier about the towing, and I don't think I answered that one yet. Yeah, it's towing is multi-purpose, so you can obviously tow ships that are stranded. They ran out of fuel, and maybe it's just or now they're destroyed and they're just a big chunk of salvage, and you just want to bring all that back without having to break it down. Towing can do that. Might even be towing of space stations around to reposition them, and then if an asteroid fits the right size, we've been internally talking about being able to tow that around. That way you can move it to a more static and more powerful mining facility rather than having to move your miner to it. You can tow the asteroid to the miner.
Could drag it into the safe zone so you can harvest your leisure.
Why not, right?
There we go.
Oh, you're right. There is a little naked guy there.
And the other guy is trying to look at what's going on with his hard hat.
With his magic carpet. The concept, I mean, from an art perspective, man, the rainbow ships are just pretty awesome. Even the one that's a wedge from it, regardless of whether you turn it on its side, and then to have all of these plates. Yeah, and so now this is that we recognize now the ship that was associated with this early image. And so this thing can literally take all of these plates and transform. It's really cool.
Yeah.
I love that in real time would be awesome. Without giving too many details, Chypto, have you seen that? Is that in the rendered state, or is it only in the concept art state right now?
Which the details? The arc. I've only seen it in concept. I haven't seen in UE5, but I know a lot of the concept art as part of the conceptualization is white boxed, so it is modeled in 3D. So it's a lot is already done up front to migrate it to UE5 once we approve the concept art.
So when Scream launches Chypto, and we're not asking for any timelines, it will happen when it happens, but when it launches, I mean, how much time do you think a person is going to spend per day interacting with it? Right now, we have staking, and most of us go through once a day or every couple days, and get our stake and refuel and do the 4 Rs. But when it comes to Scream, is this something that we're going to be doing a lot of interaction with, and maybe interacting with other people?
Yeah, so game sessions associated with Scream will be probably much longer than Score, but I don't envision people sitting down and playing the current mapped out gameplay loops for hours and hours on end. It'd be intermittent but longer gameplay, right?
Awesome. And we have a question for you. Whether you want to answer it or not, Chypto, is up to you. But there's a question here in the community. You probably have ships. You probably have them staked. What are you doing with your Atlas? If you're allowed to say.
I don't know if I'm allowed. I mean, I have mentioned I am playing the game. I have admitted to using my Atlas to buy more ships. I think that's all I'm willing to say at this point.
Yeah,
that's fair.
Yeah,
definitely financial advice.
Yeah,
we got it.
EFA, definitely financial advice.
Yeah. I'm moving all mine into Polis, but I think now with Scream coming, I might hold back on some of that and just see what comes. Will the gameplay loop start with what's generated, or there'll be? I know I might be asking too much here, or there'll be some way to spend your Atlas as soon as Scream starts.
I guess I'm trying to understand the distinction. When Scream comes out, there will be very distinct and direct ability to use your ships in this new gameplay. And there will be things that you can also use Atlas to purchase in the game that'll help your progression, not necessarily require for your progression. So there will be new utility for both Atlas as well as your ships.
Got it. Very good. Thank you.
I am curious, is there any topic within the team or just in your own head that you would want more theory crafting on, or opinions and suggestions on? Because then
Great
we can
question,
just
Ray.
Yeah, because we love to do that, and if it could provide any value, then not to reveal anything per se if there's already things in the works, but any topics that are being talked about and need more community opinion on.
I think the whole bounty and aggression and I guess PvP gameplay, there is a lot to think about there, and other games have had to iterate on that whole process to make it fun for everybody, but then still allow for griefing and PvP in a certain meaningful manner, right? Like we've been doing some research on Red Dead Online as well as Grand Theft Auto, and they all have their own hostility, bounty, and I guess PvP mechanisms that have actually been quite they've grown in complexity over time, and it's definitely not a one size fits all. So I would love to hear a lot of people, like the community's feedback on what PvP systems can they see translating well over to Star Atlas as they understand the risk zones. Because we're doing research on that now. We released an article just to start the dialogue, but we're actively thinking about this for long term, because there's a lot to think about, and we want to make sure we get that system right. So yeah, I'd love a lot of attention and theory crafting associated with it.
Yeah, I could imagine how important it would be to have it more of a constant than a forever ebb and flow of change, nerfing and buffing, whatever it is, over like a long period of time, because then it's too much, I would think.
Yeah, and one of the things about the medium risk zone is now that PvP is enabled, we want to incentivize, or not incentivize, we want to allow there to be risk, but it needs to be mitigated in some way from the high risk zones. So we don't want it to feel like players are camping the borders of the security zone, and you just feel like all the noobs feel like they just, as soon as they cross the border, they get ganked immediately. Right? Like,
Yeah.
and if we make it so lucrative that you get someone's entire ship when they get just like knocked out in the medium risk zone, then that won't be fun for a lot of people.
Right.
Right?
Speaking of which, like that raises the question. So when you go from one zone to another, will it be like when you change zones in a lot of the MMORPGs? Because that's where you have people setting up shop, as where when I think of space, you would think that there would be a wider range of potential coordinates and places that you might end up rather than this pinch point where you've just got people camped out.
Yeah, the thing is, there's both steady state travel from point A to point B, and there's warping. So somebody could probably camp a warp hotspot, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially if you think about warp lanes and having these warp nodes. But the thought about the players camping out just outside the security zone, I did mention, or it's written in there, that there's a gradient of aggression. So obviously closer to the security zone is going to be a higher cop security presence.
Right.
So if you decide to commit a crime just outside the security zone, you're probably going to get captured pretty quick, and that decreases in the security measures decrease as you get further and further out into the medium risk zones.
Sorry, Jesse. With those Council of Peace intercepts, is there a way for a bounty hunter to resist those and fight them off? Can they win that type of thing?
Yes. It's not these indestructible forces. They're using the same assets that players have access to.
And what is the actual deterrent? Let's say that I just want to, be destructive, and I see anyone and I shoot on them, and I'm trying to also be evasive from the cops. What if I am caught? Is it a bounty that I pay? What if I don't have the bounty? Does my ship get impounded?
Yeah, your ship, your crew get impounded, and you're not getting that back until somebody, it doesn't have to be you, but somebody pays your bounty.
Interesting.
Are the only ways to send money? I guess we can always send it through the wallet addresses, but is there anything in game that's required for you to hand off money to one another, outside of maybe like signing on your wallet?
Think it's essentially, so paying off a bounty can be permissionless. Somebody can pay your bounty and just send to the destination address. If we use blockchain terms, like destination wallet address for your bounty escrow account. If they pay that off, like you can log in, be like, oh, somebody, like a guildmate or somebody paid off my bounty, I can reclaim it. But it'll likely be you that repays it.
Right.
Like a Whittaker's bail bonds business.
I was thinking the same thing, man.
So now my other question, it leads into like the DAOs. Are we going to be able to have it set up in a way where we can pull from the DAO, or have the DAOs that are given or created for us from Star Atlas within the first and second have that capability?
What about the DAOs?
So
will Rome pay the bounty pretty much? Will there be like ways for guilds to take on that expense as like an incentive?
Yeah, I think we can certainly allow the guilds to have a mechanism such that their guild treasuries can pay bounties.
Okay.
All kinds of alpha drops today.
That's a good one.
That's awesome.
And then the whole fun about bounty hunting is that you capture one of those players and get them impounded. When they pay off the bounty, you will get a portion of that bounty back, probably a large portion. But I think that's exciting, because then the disincentive, the incentive for bounty hunting is there, but also the disincentive for the people committing the bounties is real, because as soon as they have a bounty on their head, they're gonna see other players around them are gonna see that as free money potentially, if they strong enough combat wise.
So is there a cooldown perhaps? I mean, I'm thinking of a situation, let's say I happen to cross deep space and I get into some trouble in a different faction area in their mid-tier zone, if I have a faction passport. If I end up making it back to my own faction and I'm gone for a long time, is there a cool off?
That hasn't been mapped out yet. I know other games do have cooldowns and very slow ones at that, where it just over time it kind of dissolves. That there's potential for us to do that. It's something we're gonna have to work out, but I can see that being a good mechanism to introduce, where you just go away for a while, go to exile, go back to your home systems. You can just you can just hang out. But here's the other thing: since the Council of Peace is a 3-faction partnership, you having a bounty in one faction will likely mean that your faction will honor that bounty. And so I think that's something we have to think about as well.
I like that idea. Yeah,
well, I mean,
I pulled this up.
Our faction DAO has voted for non-extradition.
So I pulled this up on screen, and it says bounties are cumulative for continuous crimes. And I do think it's quite interesting. How do you see people becoming pirates? Is it like a choice from the beginning, or is it like a game where your choices matter and you can't really go back after you've done something really bad?
I envision players that want to be pirates partnering with the Jorvik, who will help enable their style of gameplay, or the Ecos too. There's different flavors of banished factions. I think they will find respite with those entities in the game.
So to that end, and maybe this is what you're implying, if you get a bounty in ONI space, one of the non-aligned factions will there be some perks by going to them?
Yeah, that they're almost like they're going to be the places you can go and seek, refuge. As long as you've developed a reputation with them, right, over time, and then like thinking about you unlocking the ability to pay down your bounty, or it becomes less expensive through their bounty washing mechanisms, that kind of thing. There's going to be incentive to build up reputation with those banished factions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you can leverage them to have a reduced bounty payment?
Yeah, haven't necessarily detailed that exactly, other than the banished factions will allow you to wash your bounty. We can certainly add in mechanisms such that when you hit a certain rank within the banished faction guilds, or I guess the banished factions themselves, you can get perks like decreased fees associated with bounty washing and other things like that.
Is that related to the hacking that was mentioned in this document?
The hacking is more of a mechanism such that if you do get a bounty, but you're not necessarily wanting to align with the banished factions, you have another way of removing it. It's like a different career field. It's like now you need to get good at hacking and those types of gameplays.
I do really like the idea of gameplay where it's kind of like you're Captain Jack Sparrow, and you walk into a port and you get slapped, and then another one, they call you the greatest pirate ever, and like you can continuously like screw one person over, and that'll make another person happy. You can spend time there and screw them over and go to their enemy. That'll be a really fun, like, continuous loop where you could be like an exile, perhaps.
Yeah, definitely a possibility.
It's already been mentioned in the past when we were trying to figure out like the idea of getting goods from one faction to another, that each of the ships and different items, NFTs within the game, will have location data as to where it's at. Will this also be the same because we see here under the bounty system, theft, destruction. So if there are stolen goods or goods that were acquired through illegal means, can you actually hold potential NFTs that are tagged as stolen goods?
Yeah, working through that right now. We're trying to figure out how we would assign ownership, and then if it gets stolen, then it's still known who was the original owner of that, and that implies that it's stolen.
Right.
And maybe there's another little gameplay loop associated with banished factions where you can use a fence to
Yeah.
watch the stolen items themselves and make them tradable again, not on the black markets.
Right. So it couldn't be used or couldn't potentially go for sale on the open market, but there would potentially be another market for it. That's interesting.
Yeah, and then you can get it washed and then make it available for the open market, or you can just use it if it's a consumable resource for crafting. You can just use it, and the ship won't show that it has a stolen goods inside of it. Right.
Now, I think that's awesome because, I mean, when you look at every, space show or movie where there's pirates and there's always like, on the lookout for stolen goods, stolen items, fencing, smuggling. So I see that as being an important part of the game for sure.
There's a game, Sea of Thieves, on Xbox, probably multi-platform, but when you have, there's like you're flagged on the map no matter where you are. And it gives a chance for people to get to you and then take it back. So is there going to be like a timer on that? Like, let's say you did, or is that even going to be a thing?
A timer associated with when you sell something, when you steal something, you're now flagged on the map for a certain amount of time?
Yeah, because then that would give someone the opportunity to maybe in the area take advantage of what just happened. Like, I'm just thinking, and then if that's the case, then there would be a continual type of battle going on for as long as you're able to be seen on the map for that brief period of time.
Yeah, that's possible. There's a game designer on our team dedicated to researching this and robusting out this entire mechanism right now. Cool. So that's something we can consider doing, but certainly want to have a way for players to track down their stolen goods for at least a certain amount of time.
Right.
Now, one of the components for ships, at least for an OPOD, is a small smuggling cargo, right? So is that something that would allow you to steal the assets without getting a bounty?
A smuggling cargo, if you're getting scanned, it would be much harder for the people scanning your ship to detect your stolen goods on your ship manifest.
Got it.
So more difficult doesn't mean it's completely
impossible. Yeah.
Right.
So there's like a room.
Levels of scanning that would be required to maybe detect that.
Yes,
I'm guessing. Yeah,
exactly.
So it's like an arms race. Whoever has the best cargo or scanner, right?
Yeah, exactly. Scanning can combat stealth and smuggling modules, but then smuggling modules can protect against the average scanner.
I do have a specific question on scanning, not to just derail the bounty hunting thing, but we'll get back to it. But if you're going to upgrade for radius, is that going to take away from being able to detect certain things like stolen, or is there an option, or are they both included? Like once you upgrade scanning, it incorporates both the radius of how far you can scan and then also what you're able to scan.
I think there's going to be a trade-off with specializing in your scanning abilities. It's not going to be just increase the power of your scanner and now it's the entire spectrum of scanning abilities improved. It'll likely be specialized.
Cool.
When you're saying scanning, Ray, what type of items you're talking about? Because in terms of like what you were asking earlier, what I heard and what I understood is that if there is an event, so let's say you're a bounty hunter and it'd be the equivalent of sitting on a police scanner waiting to hear like there was a report of something happening so that you at least have a last location. But that doesn't mean you have a radar of like stolen goods. You might have a location of the crime. And so that's kind of like a starting point, I would imagine. But beyond that, you wouldn't really know where the goods are from that point. That's my assumption.
Well, you're asking?
Oh, I'm sharing I'm theory crafting how I think it would go, because once stuff is stolen, its location is no longer known at that point.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it would be quite cool if you could have like some specialization where you could wash like stolen goods, like you could wash your record.
But you wouldn't even have to if it was an item you could use. I mean, within the guild, if you put it on someone's ship, you know, if it was a ship module or something like that, or you know, that you then turned into a crafted item. So if you could craft it yourself, I think the only downside is that you wouldn't be able to sell it on the open market.
Mm-hmm. Chypto, will there be a black market fence that's NPC based? Will there be a central location for people to take their smuggled goods to and offload them?
That's the intent right now, is that the black markets and the smuggling of goods will likely be centered around banished faction systems or hotspots.
Awesome.
It'd be also curious to know, is there like, if you have stolen goods aboard your vessel, what are the ways that that could be identified? Are you like, if you're passing into a faction or into a zone, are there random checks? You know, like what do smugglers have to deal with?
So it's not necessarily certain that if you sell something, all of a sudden you're going to have or not sell something, steal something, you all of a sudden have a bounty on your head. It's hard because we're working through this, but smuggling modules will protect if a cop comes and wants to scan you, they have a reason to believe that you're a criminal and they scan you. At your smuggling cargo could protect against them like seeing that you have stolen goods.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I like that. It's kind of like how you could have like fake floors and room beneath, maybe like a secret capacity to put things. I like that.
There's also going to be missions associated with smuggling, so there will be I guess other reasons to have these modules. You can imagine that, say, the banished faction send you on a smuggling mission, and as part of the mission, an NPC is going to come by and check you or something, and you need a way to protect against their scanning. So there's other more like story-based reasons for this as well.
Yeah, I do have one more question. What's your thinking to do with scanners gain the ability to detect if an asset is uninsured? Is insured, I mean. Does that, is it like intending to make people who aren't prepared like pay the price more often, or?
Well, it depends on if there will be a difference between the loot associated with an insured asset or a not insured asset. Danny and I like the idea of players being able to just see if that enemy is even worth their time. But now we're reevaluating what the drops associated with insured assets versus not insured assets are. So that bullet might be moot, or there might be other incentives that we need to think about as to why you'd want to see whether or not an asset is insured, other than just nefarious or just being mean in general. So
isn't that the whole point in high risk zone is, you know, alpha wins, apex predators?
Yeah, free for
yeah, it's just if there's no difference between destroying an insured asset versus uninsured asset, then what's the point of knowing on the aggressor's side? So we would, if there is no point in knowing, then we would likely just not add that as, or we might not even add that as content.
As it relates to factions, Chypto, is there a point of no return where you get so much prestige with one faction where you can never get it back with another faction?
Haven't identified hard thresholds associated with that yet, but it's an interesting concept to work with.
Yeah, I think it would structure the game and allow people to. I think it's nice to have a game where people have paths that can't be turned away from. Once you go down this path, you're stuck. Not necessarily stuck, because maybe it's what you want to do, but it allows you to. Well, it's a bit more like real life, right?
Yeah, it's just, I know as part of the user experience, we would need to make that very clear what they're doing so that they don't get mad that now their millions of dollars of ships is like stuck to this this banished faction gameplay, and now they can no
Mhm.
longer be a citizen in good standing. So it's hard. It's definitely hard when you introduce irreversible consequences in the game.
Mhm.
That's definitely something we want to tread lightly with.
So where Star Atlas is now, and from the outside looking in, and we kind of talked a little bit about this with Michael during the interview, is about the stage now that's coming up is kind of like seeding the economy, and it's that kind of that foundational layer of how do you start getting things going so that it's not just reliant on the missions that are providing rewards in emissions, but now you can actually start creating or crafting, I guess, the 4Rs and potentially the extra small ships. And is that like is the idea that you'll mine resources to be able to then take those and create the 4Rs that people can then buy from the market, from the crafters, and then potentially also have the small recipes to buy ships, and that is kind of like to kickstart the economy. Is that accurate?
Yeah. So, Scream right now we're not going to have ship crafting up front.
Okay.
But we are definitely working towards players being able to either craft their own R4 or find more, or generate enough in-game rewards such that they're self-sufficient on their R4 needs. But we want to make that more peer-to-peer markets and less us just subsidizing it ourselves with just an infinite wallet. We want to get away from that. We need to do that now, but we want to get away from that and have it more peer-to-peer. So, and then after we get through the Scream and some of the planned updates, we're definitely going to work on ship crafting. And then now there won't be any GAL ship. There wouldn't be GAL offerings selling fully kitted out ships. It would be player generated ships on the markets.
Do you have an idea of? We know that the GAO ships come with crew and components, and we know that manufactured ships won't. Do you have any difference or idea of the anticipated difference in cost?
Player manufactured ships will be it. They will have crew and components, but it's on the players to also craft those as well. Not components and modules. So a player will craft the hull without anything slotted in it, and then other players or the same player will craft the crew and components. I keep saying crew and components and modules, or they've found components and modules on their adventures. They've salvaged some, they've repaired them, they have some in their inventory ready to slot into a ship that they crafted. So not sure about if there's going to be intrinsic pricing differences. Maybe the GAL ships will just be more rare or have that designation associated with them that we mentioned earlier. But as far as the actual power levels and things going, like components and modules being slotted in them, they're intended to be the same assets.
And will components have to be leveled up, or will at the end game will people be able to make end game components and slot those?
So when you say level up on a component, you mean like
say a scanner, right? Upgrading your scanner.
Are components actually upgradable, or do you just buy and replace the component?
Yeah.
So there's going to be an element of upgrading a component, like from say common to uncommon. You can use some consumable resources to upgrade it. But you can also just break down a component and then slot something that you have that's better, and then get the other base resources from the component that you took out.
And you can break those things back down for crafting materials, I'd imagine.
Yeah, that's the intent. Is that we certainly don't want players to feel like they have all this junk in their inventory, and you just kind of have to click on it in your backpack and then just drag it over and drop it into the main screen, and then says, "Are you sure you want to permanently destroy this asset?" Like, that whole concept. I don't think
it sucks.
we don't want that. We want players to, if there's junk that they're no longer using, they either sell it to other players or they break it down and something that they can use.
Right.
I think that there's, it'd be nice to see something like a scrapyard feature for if it's something that's no longer desirable in the open crafting community. You can still sell it to the quote unquote NPC scrapyard for a few pennies here or there.
Yeah. We've been talking internally about having NPC traders that will provide a floor for certain assets.
Mm-hmm.
So know that ships are not going to be a part of this first release of Scream. Are ship components and modules going to be craftable before ships, or will that be something that happens at the same time?
TBD, because we're not worried about crafting quite yet. We know that's coming. We know how we'll implement that in the game, but right now we're focusing just on ship missions and ship configuration. We haven't decided if when we release crafting, if it's just going to be components and modules first, or if it's going to be full ships. We'll definitely put a lot more thought into that when we're ready, but it's not the focus.
Well, and does that include crew as well?
Does what include crew?
The Scream, like the initial launch of I guess upgrading your ship. Are you also upgrading your crew during Scream?
Yeah, so the full vision of ship configuration is components, modules, and crew.
Okay.
So those might not all come out at the exact same time, but as part of Scream, the whole delivery, because we would get to a point where crew is enabled as well.
And then looking forward on that, Chypto, is crew something that is their capabilities are built through their experience, like what they do out in space, or are they going to grow more through the space station and professors?
Both. So we're thinking about having a way for crew to passively gain experience via some sort of training or university curriculum, but also just gain experience by going on missions and being slotted in a certain crew position.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I brought this up earlier before you were on with us, and it was the question of the status of a fleet for how long they've been enlisted. Like, a lot of my ships now show hardened fleet. Will that play any role in Scream with missions? How long you've actually had ships in play?
We've been talking about it, but we haven't come to a conclusion on that yet.
Gotcha.
Okay. I do want to mention the babies. So I was listening to the Twitter space, but our one of our viewers here, I think it's Squiddy, he reminded me of it. All of us actually, whoever listened. But can you elaborate on and update anyone who's listening who doesn't know about what happened on the Twitter space with babies?
Yeah. So we were talking about the environment associated with security zones, and the clarification I was making originally was that there's not going to be bounty hunting and combat in the security zones. We want that to feel like a safe and social environment where players are kind of just relaxing and not worried about high stress environments. So, and that'll include the aesthetic of having baby aliens running around or being strolled around, and they're levitating strollers. So that's where that whole conversation spawned.
Grogu.
You want the ambiance of the safe zone to actually feel like anything is possible.
Yeah, exactly. And Danny, when we've talked, he commented on how you don't often see baby aliens in sci-fi, and he's like that we need to change that because they certainly exist. So let's have them in our game.
Yeah, I always think of Mass Effect when I think about just the different races and the different sizes, and whether they were babies or not. But I did have a question outside of just the baby talk when it comes to your avatar and any potential multiplayer, because I like Mass Effect Online multiplayer was just like great, where you fight hordes of aliens, I guess you want to call them, with a team that you have all souped up with different abilities. So I know that might be much farther down the road because we focus on ships, but would that ever be a thing, or has it ever been talked about?
Like this horde mode of wave
Yeah,
defense.
yeah, or that, or any other types of just avatar focused multiplayer amongst without ships, like something on a planet where you'd have to go like dungeon diving with a crew to acquire some type of resources, or there's some rewards, not always in a ship. And then if you did get out, there's minimal type of activity with your avatar.
Yeah, we this the thing about our game is like the scope will allow for anything. So
Right.
if we had the bandwidth or the ability to deliver on everything, yeah, we would have first person shooter gameplay loops on planets and attacking terrestrial strongholds and caves and
Cool.
hunting aliens on the plains of an alien planet. We'd have everything, and we would love to deliver on that. But but obviously that wouldn't be near term because we want to deliver on flying in space and ship and space based gameplay loops first, since that's the core. Yeah.
So I'll take it back from the distant place I just took us. And when it comes to smuggling, can we smuggle teammates over borders and then not necessarily get caught as far as like trespassing? And then also with items. So is there going to be a way outside of just maybe smuggling humans or avatars from faction to faction or into security zones or different areas? Is it possible to mask a stolen object to get through a checkpoint of some sort or a scanner, but it only lasts a certain amount of time before it's like a cloaking device just goes away, and then you're now red alert snake, and now you're getting attacked?
In our documentation, the whole smuggling thing is not as robust as some other things. So, like all these very specific instances, yeah, we could probably we'll probably incorporate things like that. It's just it's not fully documented. Things like that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, cool.
How much of your week, Chypto, is spent just theory crafting with the team?
Probably lately it's been like over 3/4 of my week is writing up documentation and game system design. Then the other like quarter of my week is in meetings, communicating it and attending other things. So yeah.
And to that end, is there anything that so far that you've really wanted that kind of hit the drawing room floor?
Oh, like something that I came up with and then it was added to the design?
No, that was actually not taken up. So something you thought was a great idea and they said, no, we're not going to go that direction.
I wouldn't say that exactly happened, but I spent so one of the things that happened was when I was brought on specifically for like fleshing out the crafting system.
Mm-hmm.
And I spent a lot of time late last year and early this year developing an entire proposal associated with Cream and going into specifics on exactly how to work. And then what happened is when that was presented, we kind of questioned the assumption of, is this actually what we want to deliver next? And a lot of that was not necessarily scrapped, but put in the freezer for a while, because so it's like I did a lot of work that isn't necessarily going to be delivered on like as the next gameplay delivery. So then I had to switch my focus to ship missions and ship combat and all of those gameplay mechanics, and then table a lot of the crafting thoughts and design work that I did.
And do you have any idea when we'll start to see some more lore-based material?
We brought on several writers that I've been seeing some really great content they're pumping out. So don't know exactly when we're going to release that publicly, but I know we're definitely adding more details around the lore, and I'd be excited for when we can drop some new articles. I did have a meeting with a teammate this week talking about how I think we should not just these alpha drops like the last two that I facilitated, but have drops associated with just lore in general, and maybe have that occur on a recurring basis as well. So that's something that I've asked for and would like to see implemented.
I think that'd be a great idea, like a weekly story, kind of that keeps people going along with the metaverse, I guess.
Yeah, like not even. I recall we used to have a lot of those short stories written on the blog that were kind of, but I want something more focused on the actual lore, like this is the story behind the Mud faction, or this event, the signing of the Treaty of Peace. This is what happened, or this manufacturer came into being because of these events. I would love for us to release articles associated with things like that. That it is less story-driven fiction and more like lore-based articles that are canon.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a great idea. I would appreciate that more than the stories too. The stories are good, but I like the details. More encyclopedia than J.R.R. Tolkien stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
so
there's
have brought it up, and we'll see if we can start pumping that out.
Yeah, I think this fantastic idea, and it really brings community closer together and excitement around the game itself. There's a project being developed called SolarBots, and they only allow the link for when they earlier on in their development, they were having these articles come out, and it was only available for maybe a week or a couple of days for you to read and keep up with the lore, because I guess it's still in development. But maybe there's different routes to take it. But I think it would get everyone to learn about the game and the lore around everything.
Yeah, like the forming of a compendium.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now that we have brought on more writers recently, like this year, I think we can support that. We have the bandwidth to really flesh out more of our lore and have people dedicated to it, not necessarily doing it in between their other jobs. Like I know Danny was writing up, a lot of the lore, and that wasn't his primary focus on a day-to-day basis. So now that we have people dedicated to it as well, that we could probably have more content coming out.
Yeah, since it's in the future, it'd be great to see like a timeline of things that have happened in the past leading up. Like we have all of the posters so far kind of outlining what we know already, like the last stand being built by the Sogmians, our visits Earth, and the signing of the treaty. All really cool events. The assassination of Paisal.
Yeah, it'd be nice to release articles that detail those more than what's just in the poster description.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'd love to see that as well.
Have there been any cases where lore's gotten in the way of the development of the game?
That's a good question. I have to think about it for a second. So there's one thing that comes to mind. There's this kind of not contradiction, but difficulty with we want. When I asked Danny about what it'll feel like when different factions are going head to head, you would think that the races associated with Ooster, like the Ooster players, would have mostly Ooster ships or visas and maybe the other ships, and then only Ooster crew members, right? Mm-hmm. And then ONI would have only Ooster race, and Mud would only have humans. But with these peer-to-peer markets and just ability to just buy any asset, it's actually going to feel more heterogeneous across the factions. And so we're trying to balance the ability for players to buy whatever they want or trade whatever they want, but also make the factions feel unique and like distinct. So we're thinking about that because I brought up the scenario where somebody's playing Ooster and they have a fleet of Busan ships with crew members that are humans on board. Like that just seems weird to me. And they engage a player that's ONI, and they happen to have recruited a lot of crew members that are Oosters, and they're flying Pierce ships. Like that feels a little disjointed, but it's not outside the realm of possibility based on our game. Players can own Pierce, and they're being ONI, at least currently, right? And then players will, if they want to recruit a crew member of a different race that's not within their faction, that's possible. But we're thinking about how do we make that make sense? And we've been talking about having this what's the word, where you not assimilate, but like teach them the ways of your faction. There was a word we were using for that.
Will, on that same note, like with the different races having different abilities, and for example, will there be any impact on that in Scream? A ship, for example, Calico Guardian has the potential for hydroponics. Will that reduce food cost? Rainbows are known to be somewhat fuel efficient. And then you also have, like, if you have a crew of Ooster, like, what exactly are they eating?
Yeah, so the components and modules will have a noticeable effect on the performance of your ship, and it'll likely be very different from the metrics associated with the score. Like score, it was pretty coarse and it wasn't granular, and we're not going to, at least we haven't discussed changing those metrics on anybody. We're going to leave them as is. But when you go into Scream, it'll be more specific to those ships, and it'll make more like physical sense on what's actually equipped in the ships. And then when we add crew, there's going to be different races will have different like benefits. And we will certainly answer the question associated with what Ooster eats. So yeah, Scream will definitely help in making all those things clear.
If those two are, so those two are going to run side by side then, Score and Scream, meaning that if that's the case, would you have to take your ships out of staking to utilize them in missions?
Yeah, you wouldn't be able to have your ship earning emissions in Score and playing in Scream. It'd be one or the other.
But you can, as soon as you're done with whatever missions you're doing, you can plug them back into staking. Is that how that would?
Yeah, if you don't want to continue using your ship or that ship in Scream, then yeah, you can put it back in Score.
Okay, cool.
Chypto, maybe you can answer a question that we talked about early on in the podcast, and specific to the Tufa. Now we look at those ships. Are those ships a combination of rock and technology, or is that some sort of organic matter?
Yeah, someone mentioned it looks like coral, and it actually does have some components like that.
You're asking if that coral or like rock-like substance. Have you guys looked up the word tufa? Like, know what that means?
No. There's a clue.
Alpha, old alpha that we never.
Yeah, very old alpha. If we're this far behind. So it's a porous rock composed of calcium carbonate and formed by precipitation from water. All right, so it's rock.
Back to school, guys.
Have you guys looked up the definition? But I think that's separate from the actual question. Like, what is tufa? They are sentient rock creatures, and they assimilate technology. So
got it. And is that because of the cataclysm, or were they attracted to the cataclysm?
Not necessarily ready to answer that one.
Got it. Fair.
That's very centered around the mystery of the cataclysm. Just what's going on there? Why is it like that? We want that to be discovered.
So, any other words that we should be Googling just to set us straight?
Compile a list of words.
No, not really. That one I actually figured out myself. I typed it in. Danny didn't tell me. I just typed it in. Like, oh, that makes sense.
Very good.
There's a question in.
Oh, go ahead, Ray.
There's a question by Vainzilla. It says, "Why give utility to fleet badges?" Which wasn't necessarily the case. It might be or might not. We don't know. Mm-hmm. Maybe Chypto can share, but yeah, when they want us to unstake and participate in other things.
Why
score.
give fleet badges utility when they need to be unstaked for screen? That's that whole question about the whole fleet badges. Like, we haven't come to a conclusion on that,
Right.
so it's really hard to give concrete answers on what's going on there. And all I know is that when your ships are in score, they're in a smart contract escrow associated with score. For them to interact with the Scream gameplay, you need to take it out of that smart contract escrow and put it in the new gameplay module. So it's just like physically you can't have your ships in both places at once. And then lore wise, it also doesn't make sense because now you're actually using your ship as your own player account versus before you were donating the ship to the faction to use in their own purposes.
One of the things I thought would have been cool with, the idea of the badges related to your fleet would be some form of efficiency, the same way it's been discussed that, the academy that you go to, how long your crew is served on the same, vessel together and that sort of thing. I would think that a hardened fleet is probably going to be more efficient in some area. So I would think they would lend to that rather than just being a title. Is that something that's possible?
Yeah, so when we were trying to deliver score, we definitely had to focus more on just getting something out there versus adding more satisfying and progression-based gameplay elements. So what we're doing now is we're not necessarily trying to upgrade score. We're just leaning heavy into Scream and getting that out as fast as possible. So again, we haven't answered the question about the fleet badges. I'm not going to commit to anything, but we likely won't see any new upgrades or gameplay mechanics around score. I haven't seen us even. We completely deprioritize that because it'd be like putting effort and time and resources into something that isn't something we're going to keep around forever.
It serves its purpose. You guys checked that box for score.
I did have an idea though. So there can be actual badges that you put onto that strap that we also have purchased other badges for, with the outfits. So there could be something that maybe increases the camaraderie amongst the crew because whoever has been staking for so long since day one now has a new badge airdrops to them that helps the crew maybe. So because depending on where you unstake to then start playing in a different area of the game, not score, you could still be rewarded for what you've done up until that point when you unstake. That was just an idea.
Yeah, there's plenty of options, and we've discussed several of them in the back, and just haven't committed to anything yet because there's a balance of anything we come up with will take engineering time to do, and that might take away from our ability to deliver on something else on a certain timeline. So
I see that my ships have been enlisted now for 79 days. That's a hardened crew right there.
Yeah. And I think there's another rank after that. I forget how much time is associated.
It's like 100.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there's one more rank after hardened.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, I have a couple fleets that are at hardened as well. It's interesting to see that it's already been that long that score's been out.
Yeah, another 3 weeks.
There you go.
To see what's coming.
Yeah. Oh, actually, no, it's veteran and then elite.
Oh, veteran, then elite. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Reminds me of Halo.
Yeah. So.
So I think maybe we're all tapped out on questions. Unless Chypto, there's questions you have of us. I know we kind of tapped into it earlier, but as ever, we're always a resource to you as well. Thank you so much for coming on. Is there anything you have for us?
No, I just wanted to make sure I rounded out that conversation about the whole heterogeneous fleet. So yeah, when I've talked to Danny about that, he likes the idea of it feeling kind of like Star Trek, where there's this conglomerate of all these aliens, and it's feelings very diverse. But we're trying to balance that with making sure the factions feel like these unique and specific entities. So one of the things I was getting at was that one of the gameplay mechanics we're evaluating is that if you're getting a crew member cross species, that there would be some sort of mechanic associated with bringing them on board to a different faction via this like assimilation mechanic, right? So it's not there's a bit of friction associated with if you're in Ooster and you want to have an all human crew, like there's a bit of friction associated with doing that. It's not impossible.
Do you think long term that will show up in how NPCs treat players as well? So, for example, would an Ooster NPC treat a human crew member differently?
Potentially, like that's all part of the world building we're trying to make, where you have those unique interactions or unique dialogues that happen. Like, I love it when games track your progression, and then as you're walking through a town, the NPCs have different dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, but anyways, that was a question about lore versus the game, and there's been a bit of like a something that we're trying to wrestle with, making sure it feels like the factions are unique, but then also accounting for the ability to just have the freedom to choose whatever crew you want and whatever ships you want. Even though if you're trying to get ships that are from a manufacturer that's not part of your faction alignments, then there's going to be some friction associated with that. But right now, it's kind of like the freebie time where you can bypass that friction currently. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I guess that was the last thing I want to round out as far as that whole conversation.
Well, in regards to what you just shared, it seems to me that in many games, there's always a mercenary component that might be cross-race. So there's that piece in there. Then there's people who are ideologically driven for one faction or another. And I guess you could make distinction by how the factions show up and what their posture is, right? What are they focused on? And I don't know if that's a question we've had answered, is does each faction have a primary goal or purpose?
Yeah, there's lore behind each of the factions, kind of distinct postures associated with what questions or things are they seeking, right? And I'd love for us to release articles associated with the three factions and help paint those pictures, because that's something that I think the players should be able to read and help aid in choosing their factions. There's those small little overviews they have now, but I really want us to add more depth there. So I'm excited for us to get to that point and deliver that.
Awesome.
Yep. Well, I don't have any other questions. I wanted to pop on and answer the bounty hunting questions, and I obviously enjoy sticking around and just having a conversation with you guys. So it's been a pleasure. But
much appreciated.
Yeah.
You're great.
And you're always welcome here, Chypto, either scheduled or unscheduled. So thank you for being here for sure. I think behind the scenes, we've decided that this is about as awesome as we can get for today on the podcast. So we're going to wrap it up. Having Chypto here is definitely a treat. I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of extra views today because Chypto is developing quite a following. He seems to drop the most alpha out of anybody out there, which we all love. So thank you again, Chypto. To everyone out there, please make sure you like and subscribe. We'll be here every week for you, talking about our favorite play to earn games. And we'll see you again next week.
Thanks again, guys. And yeah, it was a joy talking to you guys. Enjoy your weekend, and until next time.
Thanks, man. Thank you.
Yep. Bye.
Atlas Miner, you were born to push the block in search of ore. And now it's time that you are gone. So farewell, Atlas Miner. And farewell, Mud and ONI too. Who's the sector, same to you. The pirate bastards ran him through. So farewell, Atlas Miner. They promised you a diamond mine, but I'll be damned, it's hard to find. I hope there's justice for their crimes. And farewell, Atlas Miner. And farewell, friend, don't take it hard. Getting killed ain't all that bad. They'll treat you well in the repair yard. So farewell, Atlas mine.